NVIDIA, Microsoft, those are at record highs. NVIDIA is actually up 42% since April. And our next guest says the tech trade will keep working. Tim Seymour is the CIO of Seymour Asset Management and a CNBC contributor. Tim, we've heard, I can't forget Larry's term exactly, but he said, be fearful about these levels or something to that extent. But it sounds like you see this a little bit differently.
Well, it's hard to be confident about economic certainty here. And so all economic skepticism concerned, there's a big July 9th date. There's a lot of uncertainty geopolitically. So all this is a reason for bears to have the positioning they do. And that's part of this pain trade. I think the hedge fund community has overthought this one. I think that the leadership from the market is undisputed. And if you look at that move in semis, off that April 4th, actually intraday low for the semis, it's over 65% as the group, but it's outperformed the S&P by 27%. And you're starting to get the leadership back at the same time. I think what banks are doing, what industrials are doing, tell you the story of a market that is looking past economic uncertainty. It doesn't mean that that's not a reality for the second half of the year, potentially. But right now, both in terms of the seasonal dynamics, a weaker dollar, a plunge in oil leaves the VIX at 16.5, and a lot of people that are not long this market where they want to be.
Yeah, so the question, too, is, OK, the tech resurgence has been, one for the record books. And has it run its course? The debate in the depths of the sell-off was there going to be new leadership? A lot of people thought yes. The answer was no.
Well, you've got, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Always great to quote The Who here. But I do think you have a dynamic where it's really a combination of dynamics. And it's interesting to see that this is, you really haven't heard any of the hyperscalers push back on their commitment to AI and AI infrastructure. Meanwhile, you've had both the White House and you've had the leading chip companies in the world go on their sovereign AI tour. And I think the sovereigns have really trailed the private sector and means there's a lot more behind it. What you're seeing, you noted, the move in ARM, the move in AI infrastructure, and then even moves in companies like Oracle. And the fact that Oracle's even held on to some of these gains tells you where I think the market is. And AMD, the broadening of the chip trade. So it doesn't mean that there isn't some FOMO in here. It doesn't mean that multiples are challenged. But I look at NVIDIA, and that leadership looks great to me. And that's a multiple that I'm comfortable with. At the same time, look at what banks are doing. Look at what industrials have led much of this rally all year at a time when the dollar's weaker, which I think supports multinationals. And I think it's obviously good for the industrial metal trade, the precious metal trade, and some of those related trades.
NVIDIA shares continued to edge higher Friday, up 0.8% to $156.31 in early trade, building on a powerful run that has seen the stock surge more than 60% since early April. The NVIDIA stock hit a new all-time high of $157 on Friday. The company's market cap currently stands at around $3.80 trillion. The increase follows NVIDIA's historic rise this week to overtake Microsoft as the most valuable business in the world and puts the company on course for a fifth straight daily gain. A ceasefire in the Middle East, a reduction in macroeconomic worries, and a renewed interest by investors in advanced computing and artificial intelligence have all contributed to the chipmaker's recent surge. Other stocks in the semiconductor industry also saw a surge, with Marvell up 9%, AMD up 12%, and Broadcom up 8% over the week. Earlier this year, NVIDIA experienced a decline as a result of the global markets being shook by President Donald Trump's extensive tariffs. Since then, sentiment has stabilized and risk appetite has returned thanks to a 90-day halt on the tariff deployment and expectations for trade agreements. A major overhang that has pushed investors into safer assets in recent weeks has been lifted by the truce between Israel and Iran, further calming markets. Growing confidence that AI spending would increase has corresponded with the tech sector's recovery. CEO Jensen Huang stated during NVIDIA's annual shareholder meeting on Wednesday that robotics, in addition to artificial intelligence, is the company's next significant growth area. He determined that the most likely first large-scale commercial application would be driverless automobiles. The two biggest development prospects in our organization are artificial intelligence, AI, and robots, which together offer multi-trillion-dollar prospects, Huang stated. Though it still only accounted for around 1% of NVIDIA's overall sales, the combined automotive and robots division generated $567 million in the most recent quarter, a 72% year-over-year increase. In the meanwhile, overall income is still driven by the demand for data center GPUs. Analysts predict that NVIDIA will sell close to $200 billion this fiscal year, up from $27 billion in fiscal 2023 and $130.5 billion the previous year. Citing a spike in capital expenditures by cloud providers and large tech companies on hardware designed for generative AI workloads, Loop Capital increased its price target for NVIDIA on Wednesday from $175 to $250. Analyst John Donovan pointed out in a client note that GPUs and specialized AI accelerators are taking up an increasing amount of computational infrastructure, a development that has the potential to drastically alter global IT spending. According to Loop Capital, non-CPU hardware spending might increase significantly from the current 15% of global computing capacity to $2 trillion by 2028, or up to 60% of it. The business suggested that if NVIDIA reaches its long-term earnings projections, the company could potentially attain a $6 trillion market capitalization, given its dominant position in GPU manufacture. Thomas O'Malley, an analyst at Barclays, increased his price objective for NVIDIA from $170 to $200 earlier this month, while keeping his rating at overweight. According to Barclays, NVIDIA is now expected to report sales of $42 billion for the third quarter and $48 billion for the fourth, which is higher than the about $40.8 billion and $46.2 billion consensus projections. So, what implications does this have for NVIDIA's stock? Let's explore that. But first, a big thank you to those of you who've stuck with us this far. Creating these videos takes significant effort and dedication, so if you're enjoying the content, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts on NVIDIA stock in the comments. Your support truly helps us grow. Now, let's get back to the video.
When you think about the tech names, are there certain names that you like that you recommend to folks? What names do you recommend?
Without a doubt, well, NVIDIA, as a technician, as a fundamental guy as well, there's no better story right there than NVIDIA. NVIDIA has been going sideways and consolidating and finally broke out. I think that has a 20 to 25% upside from here over the next 6 months. And because when it moves quickly. The last 2 years, we've had 100% gains in the stock. This year, we're up 15%. So for it to only go up 30-40% in the year, phenomenal return, not what people expect out of NVIDIA, but the story is there, the CapEx spending is there, and then in the Mag 7, I love Amazon. Amazon has another 15 points to go to get to new highs. The stock has been consolidating. It looks like it wants to go higher. They talked about cost cutting, which, that is a fear as a human being. Cost cutting is going to have an impact on the economy, but it's going to help their bottom line when they bring in some more AI. And then I look at old tech, IBM, Cisco, and then, of course, Oracle breaking out to new highs. So in the technology space, those are the ones that stand out to me. Coinbase, I liked it last week. It's gone
also
up.
At high.
It's ridiculous.
Looking at a record close today.
It's ridiculous how far it's run. I wouldn't chase it at this point, but I still think over the next 6 months it's going to be higher.
So you buy it on dips?
I would buy it on a dip. I think you could get a 10% dip very easily, given the stratospheric run we've seen in the stock. But Coinbase, the story is there. The crypto space.
As the chip maker recorded new highs and investors moved past their fears about China, NVIDIA's stock increased for the fifth day in a row on Friday. The massive manufacturer of artificial intelligence chips has reclaimed its position as the most valuable corporation thanks to the increase in shares. Since the stock's 52-week low in early April, it has increased by 66%. With its most recent market valuation of over $3.8 trillion, it surpassed both Apple and Microsoft. This week, it increased by more than 9%. According to Dan Ives, an analyst at Wedbush Securities, NVIDIA and Microsoft are expected to surpass the $4 trillion market cap club this summer and surpass $5 trillion within the following 18 months. NVIDIA had a difficult start to 2025, as confidence was tempered by worries about tariffs and China's export restrictions on semiconductors. The Trump government informed NVIDIA earlier this year that in order to export its H20 processors to China, it would require an export license. The chip was released in accordance with guidelines that the Biden administration shared. The rules effectively cut off sales without a grace period, according to CEO Jensen Huang, who expressed concerns about being shut out of the enormous $50 billion China market. He claimed that if NVIDIA had been able to sell chips in the second largest economy in the world, its most recent quarterly performance would have been better. At NVIDIA's annual shareholder meeting on Wednesday, Huang referred to robotics as the company's greatest opportunity, second only to artificial intelligence. Sales for the company's robotics and automotive business units were $567 million last quarter, or roughly 1% of total revenues. We're working toward a time when NVIDIA technology can power hundreds of millions of autonomous vehicles, billions of robots, and hundreds of thousands of robotic factories, he stated. To stay informed about the latest developments from NVIDIA and the ever-changing stock market, consider subscribing to our investing tutorial channel. We provide daily updates on significant market shifts and key catalysts, so hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss crucial information. We'd love to hear your thoughts on NVIDIA stock, so please share your opinions in the comments below. Now let's dive into today's video.
Let's get back to the market at large. Tech seeing some serious strength today. That sector hitting a new high, the NASDAQ as well. Steve Kovac is here with more. We know about the mega caps, but it's not just those stocks, Steve.
Yeah, it's a lot of tech, and I'll echo what Ed was saying just a few minutes ago, Scott, that it's like that DeepSeek thing never really happened, or at least a lot of these AI names have sort of shrugged it off. You got lots of M&A activity, just optimism around the AI story again, so much more going on, but not everyone is invited to the party. I'll show you that in a second. But look, we have NASDAQ hitting new records this week, on pace to close this week up more than 3%. And let me give you some highlights from the Mag 7. You have NVIDIA also hitting new highs following its annual shareholders meeting. You had CEO Jensen Huang making these huge promises regarding AI and even beyond that, robotics. It's now on pace to close up more than 8% for the week. Then you got Meta. We have all these headlines over the last couple of weeks that it's on this huge artificial intelligence hiring spree, spending enormous amounts of money. Now it's up 25% for the year. And then some of the lowlights out of the big tech names we got here. Apple and Tesla still sitting out, underperforming their peers. For Apple, it's the same thing we talk about all the time, Scott. Still has the most exposure to tariffs and did not show off any major AI breakthroughs at WWDC. It's down still nearly 20% on the year. And then Tesla in a bit of a sales slump. We saw the firing of that one VP yesterday. And then the gains from the robotaxi debut earlier this week, they pretty much got erased. Tesla, not as bad as it was earlier this year, but it's still down about 20% on the year, Scott.
In pre-market trading, NVIDIA stock hit a new all-time high. The stock was trading at $156.99 at the time of writing, with a little decline to $156.68. Following Wednesday's record-breaking closing price of $154.31, which increased to $154.59 in after-hours trading, there has been an increase. NVIDIA has served as the market's de facto spokesperson for AI investment. Early in January, it peaked at $153.13, but as China's success with DeepSeek, an AI business, and tariff concerns grew, its shares quickly fell. Although the United States forbids the export of NVIDIA chips to China, DeepSeek used them to construct its AI systems. 5 days after President Trump's Liberation Day, when he announced a slew of tariffs globally, the stock fell as low as $86.62 on April 7th. However, it has recently regained its losses and indicated a further commitment in AI at almost twice that price. However, the Wall Street Journal notes that it coincides with the dollar plunging to its lowest level in 3 years due to rumors that Trump will elevate his choice for the next head of the Federal Reserve. Loop Capital's decision yesterday to increase its price objective from $175 to $250 contributed to the chipmaker's recent rise. In a client note, Loop Capital analyst Ananda Barua said, "Our work suggests we are entering the next golden wave of Gen AI adoption, and NVIDIA is at the front end of another material leg of stronger than anticipated demand," as reported by Reuters. NVIDIA's 4% climb on Wednesday helped the NASDAQ composite, which increased by 0.3%, get closer to its record high. Don't forget to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your input helps create a more knowledgeable community where we can all learn and grow together in the world of investing. Stay up to date with the latest market trends, insights, and key updates by subscribing to Investing Tutorial. We're here to help you make smarter investment decisions and stay ahead of the curve.